No raise for you, the chief executive officer emailed. I smiled. During his live investor call, I did not log off. I let the Federal Bureau of Investigation in. The camera kept rolling as agents kicked the door open. Hands behind your back. The stock dropped 90% live on television. I am Christian Vance, and I am the most boring person you will ever meet. That is what they thought anyway. To the tech titans at Hunter Tech, I was the 35-year-old forensic accountant in the glass cube near the elevators, meticulous, detail-obsessed, and professionally invisible. The constant terror of being publicly dismissed as foolish, a deep-seated fear since childhood, was my true motivation. The constant terror of being publicly dismissed as foolish, a deep-seated fear since childhood, was my true motivation. I possessed a personality like a sniper rifle, cold, precise, and aimed at the slightest numerical irregularity. My specialty was auditing, a job designed to keep everything orderly. I was the librarian of the balance sheets, a nickname that Marcus Sterling, the chief executive officer, often used with a condescending chuckle. He forgot that librarians guard the only thing that truly matters: information. The entire operation began, as big collapses often do, with a single, absurdly small slip. I was running a routine compliance check on the third quarter marketing budget when I noticed a receipt for $12,000. The line item described an ergonomic consultation. I work for a company that preaches transparency but practices choreographed deception, and in 7 years, I had learned to read between the lines of the expense reports. The consultation, according to the receipt, took place at a gentleman's club in Las Vegas called the Velvet Gavel. That was the first red flag. You do not conduct professional consultations at a venue where the consultants demonstrate a remarkable talent for defying gravity on a chrome pole. My internal systems immediately registered a variance, the kind of friction that sets my teeth on edge. I have an almost photographic memory for numbers, and if a data set is off by even 0.04%, it scratches at the back of my eyes until I scratch it. This was not a misplaced decimal point. This was outright contempt for the system. I started pulling the thread. I cross-referenced the expense against Marcus Sterling's travel itinerary. Perfect match. Marcus Sterling was the very embodiment of the tech bro chief executive officer, the perfect tan, the blindingly white teeth, and the terrifying belief that any rule was merely a suggestion for poor people. He was too arrogant to be careful. That was his greatest vulnerability. I quickly discovered that the Vegas trip was just the tip of the iceberg. The expenditures, disguised as consulting services and logistical support, appeared repeatedly, coinciding exactly with Marcus's international scouting trips: Bangkok, Macau, the Cayman Islands. The transactions themselves were sloppy. They were perfectly round numbers, exactly $50,000, 0 cents. In the world of real accounting, real life, there are taxes, fees, and cents. Round numbers are the fingerprints of a liar who is in a hurry, someone who believes they are untouchable. I dug deeper into the vendor listed on the invoices: Apex Solutions, Limited Liability Company. A quick background check revealed no website, no LinkedIn presence, and a registered address that was a post office box in a Delaware strip mall shared with a vape shop and a We Buy Gold store. It was a shell company, a professional fiction. I sat back in my Herman Miller chair. My hands were steady. My heart was not racing. This is the part people never understand about a forensic auditor. We do not get scared when we find a discrepancy. We get profoundly excited. It is like discovering a hidden truth in a stack of lies. Apex Solutions, however, was merely the first layer. Following the payment trails, I found a cluster of similar vendors: Orion Logistics, Vanguard Holdings, Nebula Consulting. The common thread: all paid in round numbers, all approved by Marcus. But then I found something worse than simple embezzlement, worse than a new yacht funded by the company. This was stock manipulation. Hunter Tech's stock price was trading at a stunning $200 a share based on the promise of its proprietary artificial intelligence growth, an algorithm called Orion that supposedly predicted supply chain disruptions with 99% accuracy. That was our product. That was our value. I checked the research and development expenditures. Millions were allegedly funneled into these shell companies. I checked the code repository logs. There had been no significant code commit to the core engine in 8 months. The software was a shell. The artificial intelligence was a glorified Excel macro with a pretty dashboard. They were faking growth metrics. They were using the shell companies to buy their own product, inflating revenue figures to pump the stock price so Marcus and his inner circle could cash out their options. This was fraud on a massive scale. Christian Vance, the quiet accountant, looked at the screen. The gravity of the realization hit him. Marcus was building a golden parachute out of the life savings of ordinary people. This fraud was massive, and it was about to crash the market. The time for a quiet audit was over. I had found the fire. The scope of the Orion fraud demanded action beyond a mere audit report. I printed stacks of spreadsheets, invoices, and travel logs using the ancient, dust-covered machine in the basement archives, the only printer not connected to the main server logs. I followed protocol, giving Marcus Sterling the rope he would eventually use to hang himself. I drafted an email to Greg, the chief financial officer, a man whose primary professional skill seemed to be selecting expensive silk ties. The subject line was deliberately innocuous: third quarter marketing variance query. The body was polite, professional, and absolutely lethal if read with any understanding of finance. I asked for clarification on the Apex Solutions vendor, stating that I was unable to locate the necessary contract or work product for the payments. I hit send, then waited. In the corporate world, silence is a frequency that auditors learn to tune into. The quiet that followed my email was not the sound of a busy executive. It was the deafening silence of a bomb squad staring at a live wire. 2 days later, my calendar pinged. The invitation was not from Greg, the chief financial officer. It was from Marcus Sterling himself. The title was Third Quarter Review/Comp Discussion. Comp discussion was the corporate term for money. It was annual review season. I had led the team that cleaned up the previous year's disastrous European acquisition mess, a project that saved the company $40 million. I was expecting at least a 15% raise and a substantial bonus. I put on my best blazer, a charcoal suit jacket that gave me the necessary edge of a prosecutor, and took the elevator to the penthouse. The top floor smelled of rich mahogany and the faint, pervasive odor of fear. Marcus did not stand up when I walked into his office. He sat behind a desk that looked large enough to serve as a runway. He gestured toward a low chair across the expanse of polished wood, a piece of furniture strategically designed to make visitors feel small and compliant. "Christian," he said, his voice smooth and frictionless. "Thanks for coming up." I sat, keeping my voice level, the calm, measured tone of the librarian. "Happy to be here, Marcus." It was the first lie I had spoken since the audit began. He clasped his hands behind his head, leaning back, the oversized Rolex on his wrist catching the light like a small weapon. "Look, let us cut to the chase," he said. "Greg forwarded me your email about, what was it? Apex Solutions," I corrected quietly, "just clearing up some documentation gaps for the Security and Exchange Commission filings." Marcus waved his hand dismissively. Right, minor stuff. It is a legacy contract. Very hush-hush research and development stuff, you know. Next-generation algorithm development. We keep the paper trail thin for intellectual property reasons. It was a beautiful fabrication, absolute unadulterated nonsense. No one expenses high-level research and development through the marketing budget. No one pays strip mall vendors for next-generation algorithms. But I did not argue. "Understood?" I said. "I will still need the documentation, though. Sarbanes-Oxley is pretty strict about that." He cut me off, an edge of impatience entering his tone. "Do not worry your pretty little head about the SEC, Christian. Legal has it covered." Pretty little head. The air in the room did not change temperature, but a deep, cold knot of certainty formed in my chest. He had just made a mistake, one he would never realize until it was too late. He had insulted my professional competence, touching on my deepest fear of being perceived as intellectually lacking. He shifted gears, picking up a single sheet of paper. "Now, about your review." He glanced at the document and tossed it across the desk. It slid across the slick wood and stopped perfectly at my fingertips. "We are having a tight year," Marcus continued, his eyes flat and lifeless. "Capital expenditures, market volatility, the usual headwinds. We are freezing all senior-level raises. No bonus this year, Christian." He leaned forward slightly. "And frankly, I have been hearing some noise about your collaborative style. Some people feel you are a bit too focused on the weeds and missing the forest." I looked at the paper. 0% increase. The rating was meets expectations. This was not about the budget. This was a direct, calculated warning shot. Stop digging, or I will bury your career. I stood up, smoothing my suit jacket. I did not beg. I did not cry. I did not ask for clarification. Is that it? Marcus asked, looking slightly disappointed. He had wanted a fight. He had wanted me to grovel. That is it, I said, my voice perfectly level. I understand the situation perfectly, Marcus. Thank you for the feedback on my collaborative style. I will act on it immediately. Good, he said, already turning back to his 3-monitor setup. Close the door on your way out. I walked out of the penthouse, took the elevator to the lobby, and walked straight out onto the street. He thought he had silenced me by denying me a raise. He thought he had cut my leash. He did not realize he had just handed me the match. Tight budget, I whispered to myself, remembering the $4,000 bottle of cognac I had seen expensed just the night before. Game on, you cheap suit. He had told me I was missing the forest for the weeds. He was wrong. The weeds, the small details, were exactly where the snakes lay, and I was about to start gardening. The rage that followed Marcus's denial of my raise was not hot, it was cold, precise, and highly efficient. He had insulted my professional existence, telling me I was missing the forest for the weeds. I decided, immediately, to map the entire ecosystem for him. I went back to my glass cube and did exactly what I had promised. I acted on his feedback. I stopped doing the trivial job he thought I was doing. No more chasing down bagel receipts from marketing interns or correcting mileage logs. I cleared my calendar and focused entirely on the internal architecture of the lie. The building changed at night. The high-strung, curated toxicity of the day gave way to the hum of the servers and the dim, energy-saving glow of the hallways. I started staying late. Not 5:30 post-meridian late, but janitorial staff knows your coffee order late. I needed the raw data, the general ledger, before it was sanitized for quarterly reports. I needed the apocrypha. Accessing that level of data required authorization I technically no longer had. But corporate security is often designed to keep external hackers out, not to stop a trusted, dismissed employee from looking sideways. I still had my super user status in the legacy enterprise resource planning system, software from 2015 that no one ever bothered to update or restrict. I logged in. The interface was clunky, gray text on a blue background, but it was beautiful. It was the truth untouched by Marcus's expensive veneer. I started pulling threads, confirming the extent of the shell game. Apex, Orion, Vanguard, Nebula. The names sounded like randomly generated science fiction factions, all approved by Marcus or his spenless chief financial officer. But as I traced the flow, I found the true core of the corruption. It was not just embezzlement, which was pedestrian. This was securities fraud. The company's billions in market value were predicated on the success of the Orion artificial intelligence. I reviewed the research and development spending. Millions were being funneled out to these shell companies for supposed server farms and data scientists. I checked the code-base repository logs again. No significant commits in nearly 3/4 of a year. The product was a lie. The financial growth was faked. They were using the shell companies to inflate the revenue figures and pump the stock. I felt bile rise in my throat. Pension funds held our stock. Teachers' unions, regular people trying to retire. Marcus was building a golden parachute out of their life savings. My screen blurred as I realized the immense scale of the disaster I was holding. Then, the immune system of the corruption attacked the virus. An email pinged at 11:45 post-meridian. From Human Resources? No reply. Address, subject, update on organizational structure. I opened it. A company-wide blast sent in the middle of the night. The classic coward tactic to minimize immediate backlash. The message stated that to streamline compliance operations and foster a more agile culture, the internal audit department would now report directly to the Office of the General Counsel. Harmony, they called it. They were stripping my department's independence. By moving us under legal, everything we found could be shielded under attorney-client privilege. It was a gag order disguised as a bureaucratic reorganization. And then, the kicker, a second email addressed only to me. Subject, your new role. It informed me that my role was transitioning to senior compliance analyst, and that I would no longer have direct access to the level 4 financial systems. Please hand over your admin tokens to information technology by end of day tomorrow. Let us focus on team harmony and moving forward. The email included a saccharine smiley face emoji. They were demoting me, stripping me of my tools, and celebrating with a cheerful little pixelated smile. They knew I was digging. They monitored the server logs. They had seen me accessing the raw data. I printed the email, my hands shaking now, not from fear, but from a surge of adrenaline. They thought taking away my access tokens would stop me. They thought demoting me would force me to quit quietly. I opened my desk drawer and pulled out a burner flash drive, one I kept hidden for hypothetical emergencies. It was a cheap, anonymous piece of plastic. I initiated a download of the entire raw SQL database. It was terabytes of data. It would take hours. I sat there in the dark watching the progress bar crawl. 1%, 2%. Harmony, I whispered to the empty office. I will give you harmony. The cleaning crew arrived around 2 o'clock in the morning. Hector, a quiet, friendly man who hummed while he vacuumed, paused by my glass cube. Late night, Mr. Christian? He asked, his voice low. Inventory, Hector, I replied. Just taking stock of what is trash and what is valuable. The progress bar hit 100% just as the sun began to bleach the eastern sky over the Hudson River. I disconnected the drive. I put the drive deep into the hidden pocket of my jacket. I was not an amateur. I walked out of the building. The sleepy security guard nodded at me. Have a good night, Christian. It is morning, Earl, I corrected. A brand new day. I did not go home. I went to a diner, stared at the flash drive next to the salt shaker, and knew I had the gun. Now, I just needed to find someone to pull the trigger. If I tried to do this internally, I would be fired for gross misconduct and sued into oblivion before noon. I needed the big guns. I called in sick, using up months of accrued leave. I was genuinely sick. Sick of the fraud, sick of the arrogance, and sick of the beige professionalism that had allowed it to flourish. I could not go to the Securities and Exchange Commission immediately. Hunter Tech would lawyer up, bury the investigation in paper, and settle for a fine, while Marcus retired to a yacht in the Mediterranean. I did not want a fine. I wanted handcuffs. My minimalist apartment in Tribeca became a war room. I covered the dining table with the printed spreadsheets and the financial logs, turning the sharp angles of the room into the messy, chaotic landscape of a conspiracy theorist's brain. Data without context is just noise to a jury. I needed to build the map, Chapter 1 through Chapter 4, a coherent narrative of fraud. I drank enough espresso to vibrate through the walls and worked for 36 hours straight. My goal was to synthesize the evidence of the shell companies and the fabricated revenue into a story that an outsider, a lawyer, an agent, could immediately grasp. I was searching for the definitive smoking gun. I found it buried in a subfolder of the leaked drive and email chain between Marcus and Greg, the chief financial officer. The subject was simply, "The gap." From Greg, Marcus, "We are short on the third quarter projection by about 12 million. If we miss, the stock tanks. The liquidity event is next month. What do we do?" From Marcus, "Trigger the Orion contingency. Invoice the licensing fee for the Asian expansion. We can write it off next year. Just make the number hit. Trigger the Orion contingency." It sounded like something from a bad spy film, but it was actually a felony. They were fabricating $12 million of revenue out of thin air to hold the stock price steady so they could cash out their personal shares. This was federal prison-level offense. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Christian, we missed you at the transition meeting today. Legal needs your laptop for the update. Please bring it in by 9 post-meridian tomorrow. Jessica, Human Resources." They were getting nervous. They wanted the hardware to wipe the logs and the recent access. I texted back a polite lie flu. Contagious. "Will bring when fever breaks." Then I turned off the phone. I needed insurance and I needed an outside hand. I thought of David Chen, a guy from my master's program at Columbia. David was brilliant, socially awkward, and obsessed with forensic accounting. While the rest of us chased high-paying jobs at the Big Four firms, David talked about joining the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We had all laughed, asking, "Who joins the Federal Bureau of Investigation to do math?" I dug out his old email address, dmmiller@fbi.gov. I drafted the message. Subject, coffee. Body, David. "It is Christian Vance from Columbia. I have a problem. It involves $40 million in fictitious revenue and a chief executive officer who thinks he is God. I have the receipts. Are you still in the business of hunting? I hesitated. Once I hit send, my carefully constructed career, the one I had spent 15 years building, the certifications, the late nights, the climb, it would be over. I would be a whistleblower. I would be radioactive. No one hires the snitch. I looked at the 0% raise. I looked at the 0% raise, email printed and taped to the wall. Tight budget year. I hit send. 10 minutes later, a reply: meet me at the diner on 34th and 8th. Tomorrow 7 anti-meridian. Bring everything. Do not bring your phone. I smiled. It was not a happy smile, it was cold and jagged. I had found my trigger man. The next morning, the diner smelled of bacon grease and stale coffee. I slid into a booth at the back facing the door. David walked in at 7:02 anti-meridian. He looked exactly the same, rumpled suit, tired eyes, carrying a briefcase that looked like it had survived a war zone. He sat down, bypassing the social pleasantries. You look like hell, Christian. I feel like a spreadsheet that has been corrupted. I replied, sliding the burner flash drive across the table. This is not a smoke signal, David. It is the whole fire. He ordered a black coffee, then pulled a ruggedized tablet from his bag and plugged in the drive. He scrolled through the SQL data. His eyebrows, usually flat lines of indifference, started to climb toward his hairline. Jesus, he muttered. They did not even try to hide the intellectual property eroding on the shell accounts. Marcus thinks he is smarter than the machine. He thinks that because he pays off the auditors, the math changes, I said. But the math never changes. David looked up, his expression serious. This is actionable. Securities fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. But if we move now, they will shred everything. We need them to commit the act while we are watching. They are doing it every day. I countered. But the big one is coming. The quarterly investor call is next week. They are going to announce the Orion revenue. That is the lie that bumps the stock for their sell-off. David tapped the table once. Next week is fast. We need a warrant. We need to build a team. And you need to go back in. My stomach dropped. Go back. They locked me out. They know. We know they know. David said patiently. You have to play dumb. You have to go in there. Hand over your laptop and act defeated. Make them think they won. If they think you are still a threat, they will delay the call or destroy the servers. We need them arrogant. We need them to feel safe. I have to apologize to him. The thought made me want to vomit. You have to survive him, David corrected. You do it. I thought about Marcus's face, the microscopic smirk when he told me I was missing the forest. I can do it, I said. I am a professional. I would be their Trojan horse. I was the professional. I had agreed to be the Trojan horse. I walked into HunterTech headquarters at 10 ante-meridian, wearing the same charcoal suit jacket from the failed review, my professional armor. My badge still worked, which was a small, cold victory. I went straight to human resources. Jessica, the human resources associate, was there, looking unnervingly perky and, simultaneously, terrified. Christian, you are back. Feeling better. Much, I said, forcing a small, wary smile. I placed my company laptop on her desk. Here is the hardware. Sorry about the delay. Fever dreams, you know. She snatched the laptop as if it were a live grenade. Totally, she said quickly. So, the general counsel, Mr. Sterling, wants to see you now. Of course he did. I walked to Sterling's office. He was a slippery man, his slicked-back hair and expensive suit barely containing his nervous energy. He did not offer me a seat. He stood by the window, hands clasped behind his back, surveying the city like a nervous dictator. Christian, he said, turning, his voice clipped and dry. We have had some concerning reports about your data access patterns prior to your illness. I kept my voice small, vulnerable, the voice of a man beaten down. I was being thorough. I just wanted to make sure everything was reconciled before the reorganization. It is not your job to reconcile anymore. Sterling snapped. He turned fully to face me, his expression tightening. Here is the situation. You are being placed on administrative leave pending an investigation into data mishandling. You will sign this non-disclosure agreement reaffirming your commitment to company confidentiality. He paused for dramatic effect. If you speak to anyone, press, competitors, former colleagues, about internal matters, we will sue you for breach of contract, theft of trade secrets, and defamation. We will take your apartment, your savings, and your future. Do you understand? He slid a thick document across the desk toward me. I understand, I said. Sign it. I picked up the pen. My hand did not shake. I signed my name, Christian Vance. It did not matter. A contract signed to cover up a felony is void serves ab initio, void from the beginning. David had taught me that, but Sterling did not know I knew that. My signature was a worthless piece of paper to me, but to them, it was proof of my submission. Good, Sterling said, snatching the paper back, his tension easing slightly. He thought he had won. Now get out. Your personal effects will be mailed to you. I walked out. As I passed the bullpen, the large presentation screens on the wall flickered to life, showing a company-wide Zoom broadcast. Marcus Sterling's face filled the monitors. Team. Marcus beamed, looking every bit the victorious chief executive officer. Great news. We are heading into the investor call with record momentum. I want to thank everyone for their hard work, and a special shout-out to the compliance team for streamlining our processes. He was gloating. He was taking a victory lap on the grave he thought he had dug for me. I saw my former team members watching the screen, their faces blank with fear and knowledge. They knew. I walked to the elevator. My phone buzzed in my jacket pocket. A text from David Chen. We are in. The wire is hot. Keep your head down. I stepped into the elevator, the doors closing, shutting out Marcus's voice and the smug face on the monitors. I was not defeated. I was exactly where David needed me to be. Out of the building, safe and utterly forgotten. I had opened the gates. The battle was about to begin. After leaving the general counsel's office, the 3 days that followed were a master class in psychological warfare. Hunter Tech did not just fire you, they tried to haunt you. The first sign was the black sport utility vehicle parked across the street from my apartment building on Wednesday, tinted windows and engine idling. A silent metal sentinel reminding me we see you. My email accounts, the personal ones, started acting strangely. Password reset requests I did not initiate. Two-factor authentication codes pinging my phone at 3 anti-meridian. They were trying to hack me, trying to confirm whether I had leaked anything. I did not panic. Panic is inefficient. I stopped using my home network. I went to the public library to check my email. I relied on burner phones. David and I met in passing at the Union Square Farmers Market. We did not sit down. We simply moved past each other, two strangers examining overpriced kale and artisanal honey. They are spooked, David muttered, examining a bunch of radishes. We are seeing encrypted chatter on their internal channels. Shredders are running overtime. Did they cancel the call? I asked, looking at a jar of orange blossom honey. No, he said, shaking his head. Greed is a powerful drug. Marcus needs the stock bump to cover a margin call on his personal loans. He is going through with it. Monday morning, 9 anti-meridian. Are you ready? The evidence is ready. I confirmed. The warrant is signed. We have a team? David said. We are going to hit them midstream. The United States Attorney wants a headline. I replied, make sure the cameras are rolling. David paused, his gaze sharp. If this goes sideways, if they find out it was you before Monday, they will not. I interrupted, my voice flat. They think I am broken. They think I am sitting at home crying over my 401k. We parted ways. He bought the radishes, I bought the honey. That night, an email slipped past my personal spam filter. Sender unknown. Subject, friendly advice. The body text was brief. New York is a dangerous city. Accidents happen. Be careful crossing the street. Enjoy your retirement. Attached was a photo. It was a picture of me taken that morning, walking out of the public library. My breath hitched. They were not just watching, they were close. This was simple intimidation. Marcus wanted me too terrified to talk to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I closed my laptop and walked to my front door. I engaged all 3 locks. I wedged a chair under the handle. I was not scared for my life. Marcus was a thief, not a hitman. Violence brings too much heat. This was pure psychological pressure. I sat in the dark living room, the city lights casting long shadows. I thought about the innocent employees at Hunter Tech, the receptionists, the coders, the janitors. They were about to become collateral damage. Guilt is a heavy coat, but I took it off and folded it away. I was not the one destroying the company. I was only the one turning on the lights. The cockroaches were the ones who made the mess. Sunday night, the eve of destruction. I poured a glass of wine. the expensive kind I had planned to celebrate my raise with. I logged into the Hunter Tech Investor Relations portal. Since I owned a few shares, I had a legal right to watch the stream, registered under my middle name. The countdown clock on the screen ticked down, 12 hours to live broadcast. I slept the deep, dreamless sleep of the righteous insane. Monday, 8:45 ante-meridian. I sat at my dining table, coffee hot, laptop open. The stream went live. The production value was nauseating high-definition cameras, dramatic lighting, upbeat techno music designed to induce investor optimism. The chat room scrolled fast to the moon. Buying the dip. At 9 ante-meridian sharp, Marcus Sterling walked out. He looked like $10 million. He flashed that blinding capstone smile. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice smooth. "Today is a historic day for Hunter." "You have no idea, Marcus," I said to the screen, taking a sip of coffee. He started his slide deck, a masterpiece of fiction synergy paradigm shifts, growth. He clicked to the slide titled, "Third Quarter Financial Highlights." "As you can see," Marcus said, gesturing to a bar graph that shot upwards like a rocket, "our revenue has exceeded expectations by 20%. This is largely driven by our breakthrough Orion initiative in the Asian markets." There it was. The lie spoken into a microphone, recorded for eternity. The moment he said those words, the crime was complete. He had publicly missiled investors. He had committed securities fraud on a live feed. I looked at my phone, 9:08 ante-meridian. I texted David. He said it go. On screen, Marcus was pacing, energized. "We are not just a software company," he preached. "We are an ecosystem of truth. We provide the transparency that the modern market demands." Transparency, I repeated, the irony thick. I watched the edge of the frame, searching for movement. Marcus was answering a pre-screened question from a shareholder. "Great question, Steve. Yes, our retention rates are..." He stopped. His eyes flicked to the left off camera. His smile faltered for a fraction of a second. He looked confused. "I am sorry," he said to the camera. "We have a bit of a disruption in the studio." I thought of the key dialogue, the words that would crash his world. Marcus Sterling had stopped speaking, his forced smile frozen on the live feed. He thought the disruption was a technical glitch or a coffee delivery. He did not see the windbreaker yet. Then, faint but clear through his lapel microphone, I heard it. "Federal agents, nobody move." The audio engineer, perhaps in shock, or perhaps being one of the thousands Marcus had screwed over, did not cut the feed. He let it roll. Marcus's face went instantly pale. The fake tan drained away, leaving him looking like gray dough. "What is this?" he stammered. "You are all trespassing. Get out of here." A figure stepped into the frame. A large man in a blue jacket with yellow letters. Federal Bureau of Investigation. "Marcus Thorne, step away from the podium." "Hands where I can see them," the agent barked. The chat room on the side of the screen froze solid. Then it exploded. "Do TF sell. Sell." The collapse was beginning live. Marcus tried to bluff. "Do you know who I am? This is a private broadcast. I will have your badge!" "You have the right to remain silent," the agent said, grabbing Marcus's wrist and spinning him around. The high-definition camera, stuck on autofocus, tracked the subject perfectly. The subject was now Marcus Sterling getting his face pressed against the fake digital cloud backdrop. I watched the most beautiful sound in the world click, click, click. "Handcuffs," I whispered. Marcus screamed, his voice cracking with pure terror and humiliation. "Turn it off! Cut the feed! Greg Cole Sterling!" Another agent walked onto the stage and looked directly into the camera lens. He reached out. The screen went instantly black. Stream offline. I sat in my apartment in the silence, the techno music cut off, the image replaced by a dark void. I put down my coffee cup. I let out a breath I had been holding for 3 years. It was not a cheer or a laugh, it was pure, cold release. My phone exploded. The Hunter Tech stock did not just drop, it cratered. By 9:30 ante-meridian, trading on the Nasdaq was halted. The stock had plummeted 60% in 12 minutes, and billions of dollars in market capitalization evaporated. Former colleagues texted me frantically. "Did you see? Oh my God, Marcus arrested. Are we fired? Christian, did you know?" I did not answer. As a ghost, I turned on CNBC. The breaking news banner was blood red. They were playing the clip on a loop. Marcus's terrified face. The handcuffs, the Federal Bureau of Investigation agent. The pundits were screaming Enron-level event. Massive fraud. Who was the whistleblower? That was the question. Who? Then a knock. Not the police. Not a delivery. A frantic, uncontrolled pounding on my door. I looked through the peephole. It was Sterling, the general counsel. He looked like he had run all the way from Midtown. His expensive tie was loose, his slicked hair wild. "Christian, I know you are in there," he shouted, his voice hoarse. "Open the damn door." He should have been shredding documents or calling criminal defense lawyers. Why was he here? I left the chain on and opened the door 2 inches. "Go away, Sterling, or I call the agents who currently have your boss." "You did this," he hissed, his eyes manic. "We know it was you. The data logs, the late nights, you bastard!" "I did my job," I said coldly. "Something you forgot to do. You signed a non-disclosure agreement," he screamed, spitting slightly on the doorframe. "We will sue you until you are living in a cardboard box. You destroyed everything. The non-disclosure agreement covers company secrets," I said, my voice steady, professional, and utterly unmoved. "It does not cover crimes. Void against public policy. Look it up." He slammed his hand against the door. "You think you have won? You are unhireable. You are poison. No one touches a snitch, Christian. You are done in this town." "Maybe," I said. "At least I am not in a holding cell." I slammed the door and locked the deadbolt. My hands were shaking now. He was right. I was blacklisted. I had nuked my own industry. I slid down the door until I hit the floor. The adrenaline was fading, leaving a hollow ache. I had won, but I had also lost everything that defined me for 15 years, my status, my identity. I had burned down the house to kill the termites. It was necessary, but I was left standing in the ashes. My phone buzzed again. A text from David Chen. "We got the backups. The flash drive you gave us matched the servers. It is a slam dunk. Marcus is singing. He is trying to blame Greg. Greg is blaming Marcus. It is a circular firing squad. Good work, Christian. Good work." I closed my eyes. It did not feel good. It felt like burning. But it was over. Sterling's frantic knocking faded, leaving the hollow, echoing sound of my own isolation. I was unemployed, blacklisted, and potentially facing years of litigation. I had won, but I was standing in the ashes of my own career. I pulled on a baseball cap and sunglasses and slipped out the back service entrance. New York City was already moving on. Taxis honked, tourists walked slowly. To them, Hunter Tech was just another headline, another corporate implosion. I ended up in Battery Park, staring at the Statue of Liberty. A cliché perhaps, but sometimes you need that reminder that liberty, professional or personal, always comes at a price. My phone rang, an unknown number. I answered it. "This is Christian. Mr. Vance." "This is Sarah Coig from the New York Times." The press had found my number. It was beginning. "I have no comment," I said. "Mr. Vance, we have sources confirming you are the internal auditor who flagged the irregularities. We have the email regarding your denied raise. Is it true this started because they froze your salary?" I laughed, a dry, harsh bark. "Is that the narrative? The disgruntled employee? It is a compelling angle," the reporter said. "The man who brought down $1 billion giant over a cost of living adjustment." "It was not about the money," I said, looking out at the water. "It was about the insult. They thought I was stupid. They thought I would not notice. Can I quote you on that?" I paused. I did not want to be the no-raise guy. I wanted to be the truth guy. "You can quote this. The raise was just the trigger. The gun was loaded a long time ago. Hunter Tech was a lie wrapped in a slide deck. I just clicked end game." I hung up and pulled the battery out of the burner phone, tossing the dead device into a trash can. I walked back uptown. I passed an electronics store. The televisions in the window showed the fallout. Hunter Chief Executive Officer denied bail. Securities and Exchange Commission launches full probe. Employees locked out of headquarters. I felt a pang of sadness for the coders and the receptionists, but then I remembered the culture, the arrogance, the complicity. It was not just Marcus. It was a village of people willing to look the other way for a bonus. I had burned the village. I stopped at a bodega and bought a pack of gum. The man behind the counter was watching the news on a small television. "Frazee, right?" he said, pointing at Marcus's mugshot. "Guy had everything." "Because it is never enough?" I said. "You look familiar," he said, squinting at me. "You work there?" "Used to," I said. "I was the janitor."
Janitor, yes.
I took out the trash. I walked out.
The sun was setting. I realized something strange. My shoulders, usually rigid with chronic tension, were relaxed. The low-grade headache I had endured for 7 years was gone. I was unemployed. I was likely blacklisted. I was about to be deposed by the Department of Justice for the next 6 months. But I was free. I had faced the monster, and I had erased him. 3 months later, the Hunter Tech liquidation was still ongoing. The lawyers were feasting on the carcass like vultures. Marcus Sterling, having tried to avoid a 20-year sentence, pled guilty and got 8. He would be out in 4. But his reputation was dead, his assets seized, his ego shattered. Sterling, the general counsel, got disbarred. Turns out, threatening a whistleblower is frowned upon by the ethics committee. And me, I am sitting in a cafe in Tribeca, the expensive one. I ordered the $16 cappuccino with the oat milk and lavender syrup. Why? Because I can. I did not get a raise. I did not get a severance package. But I got something far better. The Securities and Exchange Commission has a whistleblower reward program. If your tip leads to a successful enforcement action, resulting in sanctions over $1 million, the whistleblower is entitled to 10 to 30% of the money collected. Hunter was fined $150 million. Marcus was fined $20 million personally. Do the math. I am good at math. The check has not cleared yet. Government bureaucracy moves slower than a glacier, but it is coming. When it does, I am not buying a yacht. I am going to buy a small, quiet bookstore in Vermont. I am going to name it The Audit. I will spend the rest of my life organizing books and judging people's taste in literature. My phone buzzed. A LinkedIn notification. A recruiter. Hi, Christian. I see you are open to work. We have a head of compliance role at a crypto startup. I smiled and deleted the application. No more compliance. No more synergy. I reached into my bag and pulled out the small universal serial bus drive, the original one. I held it up to the light. It was just plastic and silicon, but it took down a giant. I left it on the table, a final tip for the busboy. Maybe he will plug it in and learn how to dismantle an empire. Probably he will just wipe it and put pirated movies on it. Either way, I am done with it. I took a sip of my overpriced coffee. It tasted like victory. The moral of the story is this: if you are going to screw over the person who knows where the bodies are buried, make sure you pay them enough to keep digging the hole. Marcus forgot the golden rule. The help sees everything. And sometimes the help decides to stop helping. Tight budget year, I whispered, smiling at the sky.
Not for me, Marcus, not for me.